Look at this photo. This is something I took recently at the Liaoning Provincial Museum. Many people find it very strange at first glance. Why is this dragon robe dark blue? And why does it look so unusually large, puffy like a giant sleeping bag? In our impression, shouldn't Chinese emperors' robes be golden, slim-fitting, and radiant? But that is exactly what makes this artifact so fascinating. Experts speculate that the owner of this robe was the Yongzheng emperor of the Qing dynasty. It is so loose because it is a cotton robe stuffed with thick silk floss. And it is dark blue, specifically stone blue, because according to the strict rites of the Qing dynasty, this was the mandatory color for the emperor when worshipping heaven at the Temple of Heaven. Imagine that scene. Shenyang or Beijing 300 years ago. It is the winter solstice, and the temperature is -20 or 30 degrees Celsius. The emperor is human too. He gets cold. This robe was designed first to keep him alive and only secondarily to display imperial power. Looking at the slight traces of wear on the cuffs, standing in front of the display case, I suddenly realized. This is not just an exquisite piece of embroidery art. It is a survival memory of a northern nation carved into their bones. And that is the reason I am making this video today. I took a trip to Liaoning. Apologies, my phone was running out of battery, so I only took 75 photos. While organizing these photos, I discovered that the history of this land has been severely misread. In many people's stereotypes, this is a cold industrial zone or a barbaric wasteland of ancient times. But the truth is the complete opposite. This place is not the edge of civilization. It is a textbook on how humanity evolved from savage survival to extreme order in an extreme environment. Today, I want to use these photos to help you crack the northern code of Chinese civilization. If we truly want to understand the thickness of that blue dragon robe, we have to pull the timeline way back, to the era when humans first learned to walk upright. Look at these stones. I found these in a corner of the museum. They were unearthed at Miaohaoshan in Bensi. To a layman, these look like broken construction waste. But to anthropology, this is priceless. These are Paleolithic tools from 400,000 years ago. Pay attention to this big one. It is called a chopper. 400,000 years ago, ancient humans had no metal, no gunpowder. They faced saber-toothed tigers and mammoths. This rough stone was their only heavy weapon used to smash open animal bones to suck out the marrow inside. Because in the cold north, fat was the only high-calorie source that could help you survive the winter night. Look at the small one below it. Its edges are sharp. This is called a scraper. It was the Swiss Army knife of that era. Its function was crucial to scrape the grease and flesh off animal hides. Only then could the hide become soft enough to be made into clothes. Without this inconspicuous little stone chip, humans would have frozen to death on the wastelands of Liaoning during the Ice Age hundreds of thousands of years ago. So it was this stone that gave humanity its first clothes. After humans used stones to solve the most basic survival problems of clothing and food, what did they start thinking about? They began to feel fear. Facing blizzards and storms, they began to look up at the sky. These two photos show what I find to be the most shocking prehistoric artifacts. This pair of red pottery jars is called painted pottery cylinders. They belong to the Hongshan culture, dating back 5,500 years. Look closely. What is different about these two jars? They are open at both the top and bottom. They have no bottom. A bottomless jar is obviously not for holding water or grain. So what does it hold? It is used to hold wishes directed towards the heavens. Archaeologists found that these were arranged in rows on altars. The ancients believed that the earth was closed and the sky was distant. Only by erecting this kind of hollow pottery on the earth could they open a channel between heaven and earth and draw energy from the universe. This overturns many people's perceptions. The legend we often hear about Jitsi, the uncle of the Shang dynasty king, coming to the north to educate the barbarians is actually inaccurate. 2,000 years before Jitsi arrived, the people here had already established a theocratic state and had a complex sacrificial system. The strongest evidence is this: the stone shed or dolmen. This is practically the Stonehenge of the East. If we raise our perspective and open a satellite map, you will find an astonishing phenomenon. From cold Siberia, crossing the mountains of Liaoning, extending all the way to the Korean peninsula, and even across the sea to Kyushu, Japan. Along this long arc, thousands of such megalithic structures are scattered. Look at the massive stone covering the top in the photo. It weighs tens of tons. In the Bronze Age, there were no cranes, no hydraulic equipment, and even the wheel was not widespread yet. How did the people here lift it meters into the air? Behind this, it required extremely high social organizational ability, needing hundreds or even thousands of people shouting chants, using the earth ramp method to move the giant rock up step by step. They went to all this trouble not to house the living, but to build a resting place for the soul of a tribal leader or a grand shaman. This proves that the North of 4,000 years ago possessed not only wildness, but also awe-inspiring engineering wisdom and the power of faith. With faith and organization, higher-level conflicts are bound to arise. And it was right here in Liaoning that an invention was born that changed the history of world warfare. Please stare at this photo, this rusty iron ring. This is the stirrup. Western military historians once said that the appearance of the stirrup welded the knight and the warhorse together. Before the stirrup appeared, cavalry was very awkward. Look at this reconstruction of a war chariot. Aristots in the past could only fight standing on chariots because riding on a bare horseback you could not exert any force. If you slashed with a sword, the recoil could throw you off. But around the 3rd or 4th century AD, during the time when the Xianbei people were active, the stirrup appeared here. Please note this is a singularity. This small iron ring provided a fulcrum for the cavalry. This directly led to another terrifying creature. Look at this photo, the armored cavalry, also known as heavy cavalry. Look at this reconstructed statue, it is so oppressive. The warrior is draped in iron armor from head to toe, holding a long lance, and even the horse's face wears a metal mask. Without the stirrup as a pivot point, this equipment weighing hundreds of pounds would instantly exhaust the rider. But with stirrups, they turned into ancient tanks. When thousands of these iron cans charged, any infantry phalanx of that era would be in despair. You could say that this tiny iron ring ended the era of classical chariots and opened the age of medieval knights. However, if you think the North is only about slaughter and savagery, you are wrong. The next set of photos will show what tough guy tenderness means, as well as the unique aesthetics of the northern peoples. Look at this gold-bronze ornament hanging on the wall, and these agate beads. This is completely different from the gentle jade pendant style we see in the Central Plains. It is very thin and light. It makes a rustling sound when it moves, and it has golden reflections. This is called a buyao. Why make it like this? Because they are a people on horseback. When a steed gallops, these gold ornaments tremble with the wind, sparkling in the sunlight. The aesthetic of the Central Plains is static, introverted, like jade, while the aesthetic of the grasslands is dynamic, free like the wind. They wear their wealth on their bodies. They wear the light of the sun on their bodies. This evolution of aesthetics finally reached its peak in religious art. I have a few more photos, just organized here. They are Buddhist statues from the Liao and Jin dynasties. Everyone, please look carefully at the face of this Luhan. If the Buddha statues of the Central Plains emphasize solemn dignity and make people feel peaceful, then the statues here in Liaoning convey a sense of power. Look at this Luhan, brows knitted, cheekbones prominent, eyes sharp, even looking a bit fierce. He does not look like a god detached from worldly needs. He looks more like a high monk who has weathered storms and just returned from the battlefield. This is the realistic style unique to the Liao and Jin periods. Their gods possess powerful physiques. Look again at this exquisite green Tara statue. This clearly carries the style of Tibetan Buddhism. What does this show? It shows that Liaoning at that time was a massive cultural crossroads. These small Buddha statues were made to be very tiny and delicate. Why? For portability. Nomadic peoples could not carry huge stone grottos with them during migration, so they concentrated their gods into copper statues the size of a fingertip and tucked them into their bosoms. Wherever they went, their faith was there. Especially this large bronze bodhisattva statue. The lines of the clothing are so fluid, yet the shoulders are broad, the expression confident. This is not an artwork that a weak dynasty could produce. This is the embodiment of the confidence of the great Liao Empire, which stood for over 200 years and possessed its own script, laws, and unique culture. In the corner of the exhibition hall, I also found a very interesting statue, Zhang Kui. Look at this porcelain statue. His expression is exaggerated, eyes as wide as copper bells, unshaven, one could even say a bit ugly. In Chinese legend, Zhang Kui is used to catch ghosts. But the core of this story is actually quite tragic. In life, Zhang Kui was full of learning and overflowing with talent. But because he was too ugly, he was rejected by the emperor and finally killed himself by crashing into the palace hall. After death, he became the king of ghosts, dedicated to protecting the human world. Why do I mention this when talking about Northern civilization? Because I feel that Zhang Kui's image is to some extent a metaphor for Northern civilization. To outsiders, the North might be like Zhang Kui, rough, cold, and in certain historical periods, even rejected as barbaric. But beneath this coarse exterior, it has powerful strength, the courage to ward off evil, and unique talent and value. At the end of the video, I want to show you a grand scene. This is a miniature landscape model of a sacrifice in Shengjing, modern-day Shenyang, during the Qing dynasty. If the stirrup and short sword earlier represented conquest, then this set of models represents order. Look at this mighty procession. Hundreds of tiny figures, everyone wearing clothes of different colors, holding different flags, their positions precise to the millimeter. This is the scene of the Qing imperial family returning home to worship their ancestors. This shows us an astonishing fact. Those riding and shooting peoples who once galloped freely on the grasslands ultimately established a ritual order that was even stricter and more complex than the Central Plains dynasties. They learned the Tai Lao sacrifice of Han culture, integrated the beliefs of Tibetan Buddhism, retained the Manchu tradition of riding and shooting, and finally packed all of this into this incredibly precise imperial machine. This makes it not hard to understand why the Yongzheng emperor, whom we saw at the beginning, would wear that blue cotton robe. That is not just a piece of clothing. The lining of that dragon robe is stuffed with the survival instinct of the north to resist the bitter cold. Its color carries the faith of communicating with heaven. Its wide cut retains the gene of freedom of a horseback nation. And the person wearing it ultimately ruled a vast empire with an order bordering on obsession.